Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to EFA99. That's right, equality for all 99, one day away from 100. One day away from July, right? We're looking for the brightness of July, and I'm going to talk about the brightness of dyslexic souls. How the world's educational system marginalized 1/5 of the world population, 20% of the population, i.e. the dyslexics. The True Gift of a Dyslexic Mind by Dean Bragonier. I listened to that for the first time yesterday. Probably listened to it 4 or 5 times thus far. From there, I've taken notes, and this is a TED Talk, when the Vineyard TED Talks on the True Gift of a Dyslexic Mind. And this Dean Bragonier individual pointed out some very, very intellectual key points that I want to discuss today. My style, equality for all. And again, the father of a dyslexic child, and put all those labels above me. That's what I went through growing up also. And the labeling and the mislabeling and the misdiagnosis. We're going to get into this. It's going to get really interesting. If you judge a fish that cannot climb a tree, then you, the educational system, marginalize 1/5 of the world population. Like I just mentioned, 20%. You want to talk about system, like the whole system. Now we're talking about everything is marginalized, everything is a system. You're part of the system. Systemic, right? And we talk about people being put on the back of the bus. You want to talk about putting people in the back of the bus? You put 20% of the world population on the back of the bus, and this is what you did and how you did it. And I want you, those that have children with dyslexia and those that suffer through dyslexia growing up in this world, right? Not suffer with it because of you, but because of this world that you were pushed into, right? So let's go into the particulars. Trade school. Thank goodness we had trade schools, right? Thank goodness. Could you imagine the world today, like where I come from in Canada, if we didn't have trade schools back in the day? Like, it was really a big thing growing up for me. I'm 54 right now, and trade schools were a big thing. And thank goodness we had them. Man, if we have a shortage of trades right now, shortage of qualified, competent trades right now. Could you imagine the world if we wouldn't have had all those trade schools? Right? Somebody did not have that foresight to do so in the educational system. Somebody had the foresight. Somebody stood on the soapbox, and somebody, the right person, got the microphone and got the people's attention to get those trade schools going. But what did they do with those trade schools? Right? They marginalized them. The trade schools became the schools for people that can't read. Why? Because 100 years ago, let's say the industrial world, which I found out, is that we did that transition, we did that advancement, and that advancement was that of reading. We're going to measure people's ability of smartness by reading. And that right up until that point, if you remember, if you look at all the old books and texts and that, what did they used to do in school? There was a lot of congregation, a lot of forum style, a lot of debating, a lot of et cetera, right? And I talked about this yesterday with those with the bright minds of dyslexia. If you were to introduce such as art and architecture and engineering, et cetera, in school systems, not like we have it today, like the black and white pigeon box that they push everybody into, right? That other 20% of the world population, if you gave them the school programs with your arts, that like from the ground up, right, from the foundation up. I've talked about this, about taxation and numbers and business and entrepreneurship. Do they teach that in school? No, they don't. I've asked so many children, do they talk about taxes? No. High school, like grade 9, grade 10. No, they don't talk about that. Imagine if they talked about entrepreneurship and arts and engineering and that. That's what I talked about yesterday. So let's go forward here. The marginalization that you guys did by pushing everybody into a box and those trade schools that I talk about, what you did, you associated that to dumb. I remember growing up, the dunce, the dumb, the people that can't read. If you could not read, you were dumb, right? And if you were dumb, you went to trade school. The little buses, short buses, etc., or the bigger buses where more people on it. That's what you did. But what flourished out of that, a lot of those individuals, what flourished out of it was that they became the bright ones, the business people, those that own like large businesses, etc. And they've talked about this. There's tons of videos out there about all your multi-billionaires and multi-millionaires that pulled away from that system, that broke free from them, that got into their right lane, and how successful they were in life, right? Because they didn't follow the system. Like I said in my previous EFAs on 97, 98, how I burst out of that box when I left high school, when I sensed that growth. And now that I'm fasting, how much more growth that I have in my mind and my dyslexic mind. So Thank goodness people had that the foresight to go to trade school. Like I remember those trade schools, like how the labeling that was done in that. And then when I moved forward in life, I got into corrections. And in corrections, I could relate with so many minds in there. And I remember looking at them, and again, I'm one of those soul guys. I could see in people's eyes. And I remember relating to a lot of those mindsets. And then when I went on with this, the presentation, they said, listening to all those stats and numbers, it really, really made sense. Absolutely made sense. And now, because I have children as a father, and because I'm fasting, I'm speaking to you openly from EFA 97, 98, and this is 99. In the podcast, Dean talks about Dr. Gershan. Let me just pull up the name here. It was Dr. Gershan Kauffman. Dr. Gershan Kauffman studies shame, and in there, Dean speaks about that Dr. Gershan states in his studies and research, etc., that people that cannot read or have difficulty reading have the same level of shame than those that have engaged in incest. Think about that for a second. But to me, that makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. And being a father of a daughter with dyslexia makes absolute more sense, especially the last nearly 15 years of her life and what we've been through the school system, and my wife standing on her soapboxes. And I remember conversations with her and I so many times, and she would tell me, it's as if they don't know nothing about it. I'm educating them. I'm educating them on dyslexia. I'm educating them on what she needs, etc., etc. And even though we have a system, those in place, you could tell that it's not part of their fabric. It's not part of their teaching. It's not part of their curriculum. It's not part of their agenda, right? So therefore, you will fit in that box regardless. And that jamming of the box, and when it talks about the incest and the shame and etc., and I say this to people, it's because we jammed them into a box. We failed them from the onset of stepping into the school system. We are taking children from the parents into the school system, shoving them into boxes and telling them that your child is slow, your child is lazy, your child is everything but, right? Because they don't fit our system. And I talked about this on yesterday's EFA, and I've said this to my daughter before. You have to get a degree. That's the world you live in. Regardless, that industrialized world I talked about 100 years ago when they got into measuring reading as smart, and I have individuals tell me, you're absolutely right. Some of the most intellectual, smart, driven souls that I know are at grade 12, grade 13, or they dropped out of a high school, or they're not the ones with the diplomas. The ones with 4, 5, 6 diplomas, they're always in the same lane. They don't. The other ones, like they expand, they fragment, they bring things together, they make it work, they create, they develop, etc., etc. So that 100-year transition, I will guarantee you, there was individuals like myself standing on soapboxes saying, could you not see what's going on? The same individuals like myself that have been saying, look at my podcast from March and April, telling the world, when did the business community, when did the leaders of our societies, when did the government, private, public, corporate intellects of our world go in the back of the bus? When did we rip the microphones out of their hands and give the microphone to those that have no knowledge, no training, no experience, and to manage everything and or dictate the path of life of society? When did that transpire? That same mindset, that same ideology that gave those with no knowledge, training, and experience the microphone are the same mindset and the same ideologists that created the system 100 years ago. And like I said in previous Equality for All, once they create the system, once they create the buildings, once they create the salaries, once they create the departments, once they you know what I'm getting at? Once they create that, the momentum starts, and that's how they are. Nope, this full steam ahead. They will branch out. They'll do their little facades and whatever. But the bulk of the system, that's where it is. That's where the money is. That's where the money's going to be made, and that's how we're going to do it. And this whole system follows through, right through the college, right through university, right through, unless you, the parent, spend outside of the public-funded system that comes off your tax-based, fee-based, etc., and you go to a private setting, which we have done, and to educate our children, right? That's what the world is giving you. So if you don't participate in our program, your child is dumb, your child is dunce, your child needs to go to this box on this bus, the short bus, correct? And that's what the world gave you. Yet here's some more brilliant information for you, those out there that don't have the knowledge, training, and experience to understand. Let's move forward and educate each other. So the system I talked about, this system again, this is a system that has spent what, over 100 billions of dollars worldwide. When you look at what they've provided to all our children together, there was that from that industrial revolution, the last 100 years, we have spent hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide on the measurements of intelligence through reading, correct? So let's look at the scholars that debated all this, people like myself that stood on the boxes and you needed diplomas, the whole 9 yards. So I said the 20% here, the 1/5 of the world's population. I'm going to give you some stats that Dean talked about yesterday, and I'm going to go further from that in my style. So we have a publicly funded system, right? And so we are now in 2020. And I say this to my wife yesterday. Why is it in 2020, nearly 100 years plus years since they started measuring children smarts through reading? Why is it 100 years later, somebody hasn't caught on, the system hasn't caught on? Why don't we have publicly funded dyslexic type schools for the 20% of the population that have it? 1/5. Parents out there, 1/5 of the children on earth have dyslexic. Why hasn't our school system caught up in 2020 after 100 years, and why don't we have publicly funded schools for such children? Let me go further here. So remember I talked about dunce and dumb equals not able to read, right? That's the label, that's the tag we've done to 20% of our population. Remember marginalized, remember systemic, all those keywords. Remember those hundreds of billions of dollars that are always going to certain groups, but yet 1/5 of the world's population? Let me give you their stats. 35% of all dyslexics drop out of high school. Remember, 35% of all dyslexic drop out of high school. That was almost me. I remember thinking that. My daughter, parents like myself, just like parents like me for my daughter, saying, you need to build a foundation. Constantly being told you need that foundation. That's what you need. I know you think it's dumb. I know you don't understand. I know they're calling you this. I know they're marking you as that, but you need that foundation. You need that diploma. A great analogy that I heard the other day from one of my trades individuals on the job site, brilliant men and women that with skills and mind and hand skills. And he said to his daughter, some of the best drivers in the world don't even have a driver's license. When you go around the world and you go to the mountains of some countries, some of the best drivers, and I mean these people can do the Baja 1000 and they don't even have a driver's license. But they need one to work and live in our civilized nation, correct? You can be the best driver in the world, but you need a driver's license. Same thing applies. You can be the most brilliant, brightest star out there. In our system, they will jam you into a box, and if you don't have the diploma, then you're done. Let's move on. After that 35% decide to drop out of high school because they're dumb, they don't understand, etc., etc., 50% of all drug, alcohol, rehabilitated clients have dyslexia or dyslexic. Okay, so 50% of drug, alcohol, rehabilitation clients. Remember I said about the prison system? Remember I said how I related to them and I could see into their eyes and the same mindsets, and I understood their fragments. Those people have told me a lot, many times in business and life and that kind of stuff about certain individuals. And me, it's because I have that fragmented mind. I associate. I understand. I'm able to put it together. I have that calm nature. People tell me I have the patience of Job. So I'm able to understand and associate and bring in the fragmentation and harness it. I like to harness brilliance, right? I like to work with those that are brilliant, that I know they're smart, but they're fragmented. And that's what I love to do. So now let's keep moving forward here. What Dean mentioned yesterday, and in the true gift of a dyslexic mind, he talked about 70% of the juvenile delinquents in correctional facilities are dyslexic. And now, they talked about some of the experts say that's higher than that or lower than that, etc. I don't care if it's 50% or 40%. Could you imagine any other society on earth, culture, etc., be 70% of them are in a correctional facility, or 50% of them are in a correctional facility, or the 50% of them are drug and alcohol users, or 35% of them drop out of high school? Give those stats to the government. Give those stats to your specialty groups out there with $100 billion handouts all the time globally. Right? For your buildings and departments, etc. Where are you standing on soapboxes for the dyslexics? Let me keep going here. If you want to talk about, and I said this, you want to talk about, I took some key notes from there. You want to talk about putting someone in the back of the bus, which I mentioned a moment ago. The system legally put 1/5 of the world's population in the back of the bus, right? They basically, you enter your school system. Here you go, parents. Thank you for your children. We're going to make sure that 20% of them are putting them in the back of the bus right from the get-go. And just like today, the intellectuals, the facts, the data, even those that could tell you, we could look what the facts say. It doesn't matter, whatever the ideologists say. Okay, so let's move forward here. Like the misdiagnosis. I talked about the misdiagnosis. And my wife said that it's like and we have knowledge, training, and experience. So me and my wife have the knowledge, training, and experience. 30 years of it. Okay, so when we're talking here, we're talking from knowledge, training, and experience. And when she says, she goes, it's like they're pushing it into the ADD or ADHD, that go-to. They push them into the ADD or ADHD. And that's why I said on EFA97, make sure they're properly diagnosed, right? The misdiagnosis is the issue. The title is important to put you in the right lane, right? The title is important, very important to put you into the right lane. It's the diagnosis that they always screw up, right? Make sure you're properly diagnosed to get the proper title. So, because if you are dyslexic, you have a beautiful mind. And like I said, and from the realm of dyslexia and going out, beautiful minds, that 20%, all that group, that ball, that sphere should be into their own school programs, right? Their own school, which I talked about. The system, in the beginning, misdiagnosed my daughter. Just like the system, most likely, misdiagnosed your child. 20% of the children out there have been misdiagnosed. 20% of the children out there could be a hell of a lot brighter and smarter in everything. And I say this to you, and I said this to this yesterday. You are bright, you are beautiful, you are intelligent, and you are smart. Okay? Every single one of them throughout your youth, growing up, moving through the school system, the elementary system, the high school system. Trust me, when you get out of high school, you'll burst out, right? Stick through it. Stick through it. Figure out a way. There's a lot of programs. There's a lot of online tools. There's a lot of ways in educational, private. A lot of them are private, but some of them are free through online programs. Now you can have to search and find out. There's so much research on how a dyslexic mind works and how you can get it done, right? But I'm talking to parents out there. Petition your school system, petition your politicians, petition your provincial, your federal, your states, your governments, your all the way up to the federal. Petition them all. Go after the system and tell them you will build schools for the 20% of our population. You will build schools for the minds of the architects and the art and the engineers and the entrepreneurs. You will build schools for those that will make our world a better place. And I said this on previous EFA. Could you imagine how beautiful and bright the world would be? The old savants, you know, the old books and the old savants, they were those. Those that met in forums, those that debated and came up with solutions, because through conversations came solutions. A lot of those, the 20%, were the dyslexics. And a lot of the engineering feats of the world, I'll guarantee you, were dyslexic. Because if you look at the numbers right now, and listen to that podcast from Dean Bragonier, listen to his podcast and when he talks about the people that are the dyslexic and the positions they're in, listen to that podcast. And imagine the world we would have, right? Listen to Equality for All here, 99. Imagine the world we would have if the school system would not have failed our dyslexic 20% population of our earth, and how much more beautiful, bright, and advanced we would be as a nation, as a population, as a planet. Jean-Guy Bourguignon, EFA99, to all dyslexics out there. And Dean said to my people, I'm going to say to my beautiful, intelligent, smart souls. You are beautiful, you are bright, you are intelligent, you are smart. Jean-Guy Bourguignon, EFA99.